Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I am here with Holly Kerns, who is with Zenarate, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about AI technology and its application into training, which is really cool. This is the first time I've seen AI used in this way. Holly, how you doing today?
I'm good, Adam. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. I've really enjoyed learning a lot about your organization and how you guys are leveraging new levels of AI technology, not just to communicate with the consumer, but to actually improve the overall understanding and to improve the quality of the collection agents that are ultimately coming out of the training programs at various agencies and banks. So for anybody who might not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Absolutely. I'd love to. So I graduated from college in 2008, which was probably the worst time to graduate college. I was a marketing major. It's like, oh, what am I going to do? Right.
True statement.
Right. So I thought, oh, I'll go into sales, and I'm in Denver, Colorado, and Pepsi Bottling Group was here. So I worked for Pepsi in sales for about a year and thought selling carbonated beverage is not for me. So I started just looking around, and literally the first job I found was at Collect America in internal sales. So Collect America then turned into Square Two Financial. And honestly, the rest is history. I started there when I was 23 and have been in the industry ever since. So, I mean, I remember my first DBA was just a couple months later, and I had no idea what I was getting into until after that first night in Vegas, you know? And I mean, it stuck with me. So I'm still here. But at Square Two, so we quickly became Square Two when I was there in from 2009 up until its last days. I spent about 4 years on the sales side, so in the business development team, really selling downstream debt to a variety of different organizations in the industry. And once the CFPB came, and that kind of became a thing of the past with third-party sales, I moved over to the operations side. And that's really where I found my passion in this industry. So I was focused on the ops side in both our internal collections group, which is called Freshview Financial, which was really just the first level of collections, but then primarily managing all of our legal network. So we had a captive group of law firms, and I was leading the management of all of them. So I think at the end we had about 13. We really pared that down really towards the end as well, but focused on not only the inventory movement side of things, so when our account's going to move over to those and partnering with our BI group, but also how are those law firms performing, and what are some of the intricacies when it comes to legal collections, and all of that. So really kind of a niche world there, but had a ton of fun and was sad to see it go. I took about a year off once we wound Square Two down, spent some time with my kids. And after that, I got a call from Brian Toot, who I worked with at Square Two, and said, hey, we're building something pretty cool here, pretty special. Why don't you come on board? So I joined Zenarate in 2019.
Wow. Okay. And so it sounds like your history in this industry has brought you to a really specific point with a really great skill set as it relates to what you're doing today. So for anybody that's not familiar with Zenarate, can you tell everybody a little bit about Zenarate and what you guys do there?
Absolutely. So at the highest level, we're human-centered AI. So what we're focused on, the Zenarate AI Coach, is helping leading brands really develop top-performing customer-facing teams. So when you think about, you know, the last time you got on an airplane, the person who was flying the plane, not only did they do tests and quizzes and went to pilot school, they also did the flight simulator, right? And that flight simulator aspect is key. I'm sure you wouldn't have wanted folks to come on the plane and your pilot to say, hello, everybody. This is my first time on a plane, but buckle up and we should be safe, right? They learn through the simulation. And that's what we provide. So we're the first in the industry that allows that simulation, that flight simulator for call center agents.
Wow. Okay. And that just leads me to so many different questions as we kind of think about this. So, As Zenarate has kind of gotten rolling, I know that you guys are working with some agencies, but it seems like your bread and butter has really been directly with the creditors, helping them on their first party side. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what that world is like from a first party perspective versus a third party perspective?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what's interesting is I came into this really focused on the third party side, right?
Mhm.
That was what I knew. And so it was exciting to get to see some of the intricacies from a first party perspective. At the end of the day, I would say the biggest difference, I mean, I would say the job itself is not really different at all. But when you think about that captive audience in your learning group, right? Hiring folks to do first party collections at a big bank is
Mhm.
hard. It's hard to keep people. The retention is difficult because guess what? I can go to the bank down the street and maybe they're going to pay me a little bit more. Maybe they're going to have a different benefit, right? So
Mhm.
one of the biggest things we've seen from our clients is, and with the Great Recession or the Great Resignation, sorry, right? The Great Resignation where all these agents are like, I'm going to quit, right? I can do
Mhm.
better things. I can do other things, is really that intangible. What can we provide for you from a learning perspective, from a growth perspective? So they really focus on that aspect of making sure that all the people they bring in under their wing feel
Mhm.
like they're just as much a part of the bank as anybody else, right?
Okay. I really like that approach, right? I guess my next question is as we look at the AI technology itself and how we're applying that to the agents, are you doing this more just in that initial training, or is there ongoing support and training for agents that maybe have been around for a while? Like, is it just initial training, or is it also kind of compliance corrections and improvement as well?
It's a great question. So it's both. The easiest, I would say, place is new hire. You have a captive
Mm.
audience. You're teaching the new hires what they need to know. I really think of it as tier one training. You're going to teach them the basis of the job, right?
Mhm.
How do you open the call? What's your negotiation waterfall? There's all that compliance anxiety that you have when you first start, right? So how do you tame those nerves, but also allow them to feel like they have the flexibility to make the conversation their own with the customer.
Mhm.
So new hire makes perfect sense, right? It's a no-brainer. When you get to tenured, it's actually really impactful as well. The
Okay.
key though is where you have the right attitude. So we all know that the majority of people who are sitting in that seat, we know how hard it is to collect. And at the end of the day, when they leave, they're not saying, gosh, I'm so glad I didn't try today, right? They're like, oh my gosh, this is such a hard job. How can I get better? So
Yes.
that middle 60%. So your top performers, they're your top performers, right? Your bottom performers, we've seen some improvement there too, but a lot of times potentially they're just not the right fit for the job. But the
Mhm.
middle 60, right? Those people who have the right attitude and desire to learn, that's where we see this fitting. And really what we do is tenured or is targeted training for those tenured agents. And that can look different depending on the institution. So we all know off the phone times is something that's so difficult to manage through when you have high
Mhm.
call volume, right? But where agents are struggling in a particular area, when they have a one-on-one with their manager, what we oftentimes see folks doing is, hey, now you're struggling with negotiation waterfall, right? You're just not, you keep forgetting to ask when they can make a payment after you've gotten the initial setup.
Mhm.
So let's go in and do an AI conversation simulation with Zenarate and practice that. And you actually watch as the manager, your agent interacting with the AI coach. The AI coach is providing in the moment real time feedback there. And then you could just have a quick debrief. The other flip side to that is you could say to your agent, hey, Adam, I see you're struggling with negotiation, or you're not offering auto pay, right? You keep forgetting to offer auto pay at the end of the call. I totally know it's you want to kind of get to the next call, right? But here, practice this. Take 15 minutes, practice, send me your best. So they're going through just 15 minutes, going through that conversation. They're self-reflecting. Hey, how did
Mhm.
I do? Did I do, do I really want my manager to see this? They can share that with their manager, and then the manager can debrief either during the one-on-one or actually give real-time feedback in the system as well.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So a lot of different pieces. So as you're going through in this training, I'm assuming from an AI perspective is kind of customized, right? Like you're not just throwing the same things because you're going to have to respond to specific statements made by the agent, those kinds of things. Does the training look different depending on the types of products that you're collecting? Like would it look very different for an agency that's working mostly medical versus a credit card shop versus an auto shop?
Yeah, great question. So there's definitely intricacies, right? We also work with a lot of BPOs. And the
Mhm.
biggest thing we see there is, well, gosh, I'm not just, one big bank and it's one product and this is my call flow. I'm working for, 15 different banks and they
Mhm.
all want something different and et cetera, et cetera. So that's actually where the AI coach can really help in that sense, is that you have your base, right? And it really depends on the company you're working for, or the large institutions you're working for, whether or not they're really prescribing, here's how I want you to collect first. You
Mhm.
do what you want, right? And I am sure you know that a lot of those companies have different varying opinions on that, right? But you're going to take your base, right? So you have to open the call, you have to state the mini Miranda, you have to give the QA disclosure, but there might be intricacies, whether that be because you're working with different products or different clients.
Mhm.
What we do is just overlay those differences. We call them nuances, right? So
Okay.
one that comes to mind, that's really interesting is some issuers will say, hey, in the QA disclosure, you have to say recorded and or monitored. Some will say, hey, you have to say recorded or monitored. If you say recorded and monitored, then you're done. It's a compliance violation. So those intricacies can even be related to the AI coach, right? So if
Okay.
you say, I'm working product A today and I have to say recorded or monitored, and I say recorded and monitored, the AI coach can stop me, give me a reminder. Hey, as a reminder for this product, you must say XYZ. So definitely there are variations, and it's very easy to customize your Zenarate AI coach, depending on whatever those may be, based on product or issuer or what have you.
Well, that leads me to my next question is like, so if I wanted to roll something like this out for my agents, what kind of IT commitment do I have to put into building this thing, into coding it, into customizing? Like what kind of IT resources do I need? Meaning like basic level, do I need SQL developers? Like what is my commitment from my side on in my technology team?
Great question. So Zenarate requires no personal or account information, no IT involvement. And I'm sure you're thinking that can't be true, Holly, but it is. The only thing we do is send over an allow list. So, hey, here are all the URLs that need to be allowed. Send those to your IT folks.
Okay.
That's it. Other than that, all you need is a Chrome browser and a headset. We do all the work for you. No other IT required.
Wow. Okay. So that's very surprising to be quite honest, right? Like that's pretty cool. So as you talk about like the customizations, and the nuances of the products and all of that, who generally within an agency organization is kind of managing or communicating that process with Zenrate?
It's a great question too. So it varies. Sometimes we'll work with training leaders. Sometimes we'll work with operations leaders.
Mhm.
But typically, whoever is the one that's managing the product, you're going to want to get buy-in from three different groups. So your QA department, your operations department, and your training department. Right? If you can get
Mhm.
all three folks on board, then whatever we put into the system, everyone will agree to, and it doesn't matter who runs the product or project, if you will. One of the biggest things we've seen is it really depends. It's a mixed bag. Some folks will come and say, hey, here's our call flow. This is exactly what we want agents to learn. Most actually say, gosh, that's a good question. I don't really know what we're teaching our agents. And the operations folks may have different opinions than the QA folks, than, what have you, right? So as long as so a lot of it is really bringing all of those voices to the table and getting the buy-in on what you want your agents to be great at. And at that point, you're off and running.
Wow. Okay. So that all makes an incredible amount of sense. So you're reducing the overall resources that are needed for that process. You've got to get all of these different teams tied up, but it seems like a lot of this is things that we should be doing regardless of whether or not we're using AI coaching, right? Like making sure that our training and our operations teams and our QA teams are all on the same page in terms of what we're teaching and how we're executing on those individual things as we start to roll those out. Have you found, through the deployments that Zenarate's done so far, that this is, I know it's a training tool, but have you seen an improvement in retention rates as well? I would think that at least in the first, call it 180 days or the first year, that people are probably seeing more success faster in terms of being able to collect dollars, hitting their commission marks, and being able to to find a career versus a job in the receivables management space. What's been your experience as you guys have gone through larger deployments?
Yeah. So we have seen really great metrics when it comes to attrition. So on average, we've seen up to 32% lower attrition as a result of the Zenarate AI Coach. The other thing that we've seen is 56% faster speed to proficiency. So
Wow.
I just recently got off a call with a client where they said, you know what, our agents are coming out of new hire training and they're performing at 96% to what my tenured floor agents are performing after 3 weeks.
Wow.
So they feel more confident, right? Because I mean, I remember when I was in sales thinking about that, right? How many times did I practice on a live customer and just bomb it? And so not only and that was one of the reasons why I left Pepsi, right? Like, oh gosh, I can't do sales. This is crazy. I'm just bombing left and right. If I was able to practice those skills behind closed doors, get confidence in myself, then I would have been more confident to sell that carbonated beverage, right? So same sort of thing is true. And to your point, Adam, that agents feel more supported. It can be done anywhere too. So if they're struggling, you can, and of course this, HR is you don't want folks to feel like they have to work off hours, but if they feel like they want to get into their Zenarate AI Coach and practice, at night before they go in tomorrow, because that just makes them feel more confident, they can do that. They don't have to be within the four walls of that institution as long as the institution's given them access to the system.
Wow. All right. Well, it sounds like you guys have a very interesting approach to leveraging AI technology. And I've done quite a few different AI videos on this Receivables Roundtable series, and they've all been related to either QA or, process flows, account scoring, and other things. And this seems like a really interesting use of, that whole artificial machine learning type of intelligence. And we also hear a lot about organizations that are doing this outbound stuff, right? So like they have these AI IVRs and things so that as incoming calls are coming in, they can answer those and kind of manage or even outbound campaigns. But you're taking that even further downstream and saying, how can we improve the live agent's expectations here? Which I think is a really unique approach to the problem, right? It's a very different way and creative way to look at where was the weak link in the chain and how can we improve that. And it sounds like the results ultimately speak for themselves. For those of you that are watching today, if you have any additional questions for Holly or myself, feel free to leave them in the comments below on LinkedIn or YouTube. We'll both be responding to any questions that you have. If you have any additional topics that you'd like to see us discuss, you can leave those in the comments below as well. In the short term, Holly, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. I learn a little bit from every conversation, and it sounds like you guys are doing some really creative things over there.
Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. For all of you that are watching, again, any questions, leave them in the comments below, and looking forward to seeing you all again next week. Thanks so much, everybody.